real threat is the people. Just when humanity should be coming together, they turn on each other instead. I've got a daughter to protect.
What the hell?
Hi! It's been a while since I did one of these. Now, we've already talked about the glory that was Dead Rising on this channel, twice technically, so now it's time we get back to the world of purging the undead, this time with its sequel, Dead Rising 2. This was honestly my entry into the series of Dead Rising, and frankly, probably what got me loving zombies as an entire concept. There's just something fascinating about strapping two chainsaws onto a pontoon oar and swimming through zombies, watching the blood and body parts flying. It always makes me smile, totally not a sign of psychopathy. I gotta say, this and Off the Record were the games that really pulled me into the series, and I often find myself really becoming enamored with the series when I come to their second or later entries. Disgaea 2, Digimon World 2, Yakuza 0, Persona 3, Devil May Cry 3, I think you get the point. So, like last time, we'll be taking a tour through Fortune City, where we'll laugh, we'll cry, and of course, in hopes of making it big on the slots and cards, yank out half our hair until we decide to cheat because these slots are more rigged than a carnival game. I'm MangaKamen, and this, my friends, is the death of Dead Rising. Dead Rising 2. Yippee! Dead Rising as a game had managed to acquire a bit of a fanbase after the first title, with it getting a few awards, whatever that means in terms of quality, and favorable reviews, so a sequel would only be natural. And after Dead Rising's release in 2006, there were rumors that there was a sequel in the works, and rumors they were a-flying. While the official announcement was made in 2009, there were speculations and articles coming out prior. One such noteworthy source would be Eurogamer getting some offhand information that the game would be developed by Blue Castle Games, which isn't exactly the same hands-on approach with the first game. And it's odd because before working on Dead Rising 2, Blue Castle had only worked on baseball games, specifically the Bigs and the Bigs 2. Guess a stray home run must have hit one of Capcom's devs in the head because it worked out pretty good. At least they got proper swing on the baseball bat for Chuck. Still, the developers were working with KJ Inafune at the time, and still had a number of the original Dead Rising team members. So there was hope, and considering the result, I'd say they did a damn good job. Much like the first one, many other games in the early stages, the first actual playable build, all the way back in 2009, looked quite a bit, different?
Hey yo, what the fuck?
While there were some things that remained the same, like the casino theme for the areas and the main character's jacket, you'll probably notice that his hair is, well, boring. I guess Capcom didn't like the cut, G. To point out something, unlike Dead Rising 1, DR2 didn't have a lot of public available builds. Hell, the screenshots that were shown on screen were from one of the only builds that wasn't available to the public, and before the actual release of the game, there were only 2 actual builds that people could actually view or play, and even more unfortunate, no more Sextus. May you rest in peace, Sextus! So there's not really a lot of information about the development of Dead Rising 2, at least in this portion, so we'll just toss this segment into the trash and just talk about the premise in the prequel game. Randolph Steyer, one of the main art designers for the game, actually has a blog where he goes in depth about the concepts of it.
In concept, the game was comprised of mega casino cities connected by a bullet train. They had a single casino, playable to show me on my first day. It wasn't until later on that I had learned that the concept team was feeding the level design to the environment team. This posed a problem, as there was no mission content driving the direction. It was more of a free-for-all.
From his testimony, it sounded like there was some messy development growing pains going on with the game, especially before alpha. But another creator, Josh Bridge, was assigned on as level design director. Things started to get a lot more tight-knit, which allowed the team to have Steyer work on the prologue of the game, Case 0. This is where people were finally given a taste of the magic of Dead Rising 2, where we finally get to talk about a protagonist, Chuck Green. Case 0 takes place after the events of the zombie outbreak in Las Vegas, with former motocross champ and former reckless playboy? Chuck Green managing to escape with his daughter who was bit by her zombified mother. So Chuck is on the clock to find his daughter some zombrex in the small town of Still Creek. Not to mention he needs to be able to protect himself and his daughter Katie from the zombies that have overrun the town. The prequel game Case Zero allowed players to get a small taste of the new mechanics that would be in the full Dead Rising 2 game, stuff like changed movements of Chuck and of course the combo weapons. We'll get more into that when we get to the actual game, so just keep that in the back of your mind for now. And for the small price of $5, you'd be able to experience this game, but only if you can get it via the Xbox Live service. And it's never been ported over to other consoles or such, so getting your hands on this is about as rare as getting hit by a shark in your toilet.
Shark, hog.
Still, the game also allowed people to transport their level and weapons that they got into the prequel into the main game, so Xbox players managed to get a boost when they got into the full game. And honestly, Case Zero is a good idea for games. It allows players to experience the upcoming game's mechanics, introduce some primary characters, and even transfer a player's experience to the full game before diving headfirst into the more expansive purchase. That's not something you see nowadays in the gaming industry, and it's something that should be done more and more, since while the current state of the medium isn't all that great, stuff like this would be so much better for consumers. But now, I think it's time we talk about the actual title of Dead Rising 2.
Let's kick some ass.
Here it is, the part of the video that people want to see, the actual game of Dead Rising 2. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fortune City. The lights, the slots, the drinks, and of course, the undead horde of zombies that you can mow down with chainsaws, run over with various vehicles, or use the Wonder Wand on them. It's like having Saints Row 3 at home before Saints Row 3, or is Saints Row 3 the discount cheap version of Dead Rising 2? Meh. Jokes aside, we keep following Chuck Green as he competes in one of the greatest shows of all time, Terror is Reality. Being a former motocross champion, Chuck is forced to mow down zombies on this mess of a show so he can purchase Zombrex for his daughter Katie. And depending on the player, you can win money to get your daughter's medicine too. However, this is a video game and there are zombies involved, so obviously there's an explosion that releases all the zombies that Terror is Reality held captive onto the city, tearing anyone and everyone apart in glorious bloody messes. To make matters worse, Chuck is accused of starting this outbreak of zombies, so it's up to you to save Katie, escape the city, and clear your name in the process before the military arrives to clean out the zombie horde. While I will go deeper into the story later, I will say there is some kind of motivation given to the player, since, hey, if you want to make a relatable character, might as well give them a kid to look after.
Here at Hollywood Studios, we've been conscious of what successful films have not only been made, but have stood the test of time. After many decades of research, we've realized that part of the process of making a successful film is having a good story. Turns out, all we had to do was place a dainty, slimmer rock next to it with 1 or 2 pebbles by its side. Oh, please don't kill him! He's got a family! And then we smashed it.
I certainly did comment on this aspect of Katie in my original video on it, and while I still don't like her as a mechanic in the game, I've softened a little bit over the years in that regard. But I still find it to be a bit of a cheap addition to the game's story. This is still a solid foundation to the narrative of the game, although. I will admit that Chuck has a bit of a double-edged element to him as a main character. He certainly isn't as entertaining as Frank West is, but Chuck does have a bit more personal stakes in the story than Frank did in the first. Frank didn't have to catch the scoop. There was a story to be found anywhere, and he could have just not bothered as much with he did in Willamette. But Chuck has to be here, and he can't afford to not fight his way through zombies or his daughter is as good as dead. And then there's the fact that the outbreak does actively involve Chuck since he's being accused of starting it. And there's the personal stake in the game's story that you want to solve. It provides a very good motivation for the players who want to get into the story since there's a much more personal stake riding at the start. Of course, a change of protagonist isn't the only change from the original. Dead Rising 2 offered a lot of changes from the original never had, such as online co-op, where you could play with another person and they'd be Frank West in the game.
You're wrong. That was only in Case West. How about you get your facts straight, huh? This is why I kidnapped you in the first place. You know, aside from my, Joker arc.
I should not dispel it, but playing with another person can be a much more entertaining venture. Or just do stupid things in the game and see how much monkey business you can get involved in, that's good too. Then there's the fact that Chuck isn't a photographer, so he doesn't have the photography game mechanic, but to make up for that, Chuck brings his mechanical skills into play with probably one of the best mechanics brought to the series. The combo weapons. If you can find yourself a maintenance room in Fortune City, you can find a workbench that can allow you to combine 2 weapons in order to make a stronger one. Generally, combo weapons tend to be stronger, have better durability, and can earn you more prestige points when you defeat enemies. And these weapons can be really logical. The first one you get, the spiked bat, is pretty self-explanatory. You just hammer a lot of nails into a wooden bat. It's something that pretty much anyone can come to a conclusion to, and it's one of the most common weapons people think of when it comes to bashing in zombies' heads. Wooden bats are quiet and easy to find a lot of places, and modifying them is pretty easy. Granted, there are some combo weapons that do stretch the imagination a little, a very prominent example being the paddle saw. It's a combination of a paddle and a chainsaw, but when you combine it, you somehow get another chainsaw to put on the other side. Not that I'm complaining, mowing down zombies is really fun. Or how about the laser sword, where you can finally show Disney how a proper Star Wars sequel is supposed to be done for the low cost of a flashlight and gems. Basically some pretty goofy stuff. Well, not as goofy as my editor is when he plays the game. Like I said, some do stretch the imagination, but it's a video game where we're fighting zombies, and while there is some logic necessary for the games to work, more often than not, people are willing to suspend their disbelief for the sake of entertainment. And while not everything in the game can be combined, the game's nice enough to have icons next to the items you can pick up that have a wrench next to them so you can tell what items you can combine. You can also learn combo weapons through various posters, leveling up, rescuing particular survivors, or defeating some psychopaths. Doing these will get you combo cards and will also allow you to get PP bonuses, and you can unlock the heavy attack with the respective combo weapon. Now, without the required elements mentioned, you can still use the combo weapon, you'll just get a scratch card instead, but you won't be able to get the heavy attack or the PP bonus. There's about 50 unlockable combo cards you can get, and if you're curious about what items can be combined, if you're holding an ingredient from one of the combo weapons and you have the other half in your inventory, if it's nearby, you'll see the wrench icon glowing for both. There's also a major change with the camera. In comparison to the original, the camera is a lot closer to Chuck than to Frank, and that can be a bit of a detriment since it could be making the screen a lot more filled than normal and you won't be able to see behind Chuck as much as you could with Frank. Shooting has also been improved and you can now move around and shoot, plus the aiming system's been improved. But probably one of the better changes is the AI of the characters you need to save. No longer do you have to worry about survivors dying in ankle-high water, not to mention the zombies will actually target Chuck if he has survivors. So the escort missions are done a lot better. There was also the transceiver improvement. You see, in the original game, when you were given a call by Otis, it essentially made you vulnerable in the game. And this was whenever you got a mission for a psychopath and survivors, so this would happen a lot. It was part of the reason why this guy was seen as the actual villain of the main game. A meme for sure, but damn you to hell, Otis. My editor started his Joker arc because of you, and now he's got me locked up in the basement. Send help, please! But back on topic, when you were called by this bald-headed bastard, you wouldn't be able to jump, attack, switch weapons, or pick up any items. And if you got interrupted, like if a zombie decided to munch on Frank's junk, you'd have to answer again. And not only would you be stuck in the same gimped movement ability, but Otis will actively scold the player for being rude.
What were they thinking?
I'm sorry, Otis, I was just being bitten by a zombie. I didn't mean to be so insensitive, you prick. However, in Dead Rising 2, the only calls you have to take are of urgent ones. which are related to the game's story. Others can be skipped but still be added to your watch display, and you don't get scolded for skipping them. And finally, there's a money system added, so you can use it to buy from pawn shops or gamble in the casinos, and it makes sense. Where else would people lose so much money that they'd lose the will to live, aside from playing, I don't know, Genshin Impact? Ugh.
This is so dumb.
But yes, gambling casinos would be where a lot of money is at, and sometimes you can buy Zombrex from the stores as well. Right, I should probably explain that too. Tying into the time mechanic from the first game carried to this one, at times you'll have to return to the safe house to administer a dose of Zombrex to Chuck's daughter, and you can only administer it in a certain time frame, so it's best to not be too early to deliver the dosage. If you fail, well, that's an instant game over. Look, I'm not a huge fan of this mechanic, especially since you have to manage your time around this, and it can be a bit of a pain to drop what you're doing and have to go to Katie to make sure that she doesn't become an example of extreme case of eczema. Still, that's my own personal take on that, and despite that, there are some changes made to Dead Rising's original core concept. Dead Rising 2 does have its own identity with its mechanics. Some of them are improvements, others are different takes on the concept, and others are just dependent on what you're looking for with a time-based zombie survival game. I find Dead Rising 2, in my own humble opinion, to be a good addition to the core gameplay, with combo weapons being the best addition to the series that, with the exception of the remaster, have been in every game since then. Now, what about the story of Dead Rising 2? Well, before we get to that, I need to give a spoiler warning just to be on the safe side, but if you just want to get to the next chapter where I talk about the alternate universe take of Dead Rising 2, well, go right ahead. In the original Dead Rising, one of the underlying themes of the game was consumerism. That shouldn't be a big shocker, since zombie media all the way back to Dawn of the Dead went over that constantly. However, there were other elements such as the dangers of the global meat industry, the war on terror, and how the United States can create its own enemies. And there are much deeper themes in the game, but most big-brain YouTubers will just liken it to "my consumerism and Americans are crazy." Meanwhile, Dead Rising 2 has a bit of a different approach. Of course, you've got the terrorist reality television show, which exploits the zombies for the use of entertainment, something that Shaun of the Dead did way back as well, so it's not just an American thing. But you also have Phenotrans, the pharmaceutical company that created the anti-zombification drug known as Zombrex. Yes, that same Zombrex that Chuck has to give his daughter so she doesn't turn into the ankle biter. As you progress through the story, you uncover the reason for the outbreak was because Phenotrans needed a zombie outbreak to happen. Not only to stir people into buying up their products and bringing new customers, but also because they needed to harvest the zombies to produce the Zombrex supply. Oh yeah, Zombrex is made out of these weird bees. It's a cautionary tale about the dark side of Big Pharma. Honestly played up for the setting, but it's a scary thought to think about. Especially when you consider that Phenotrans, as we're told, has done this before.
Fortune City was a small price to pay to ensure our country's way of life. You murdered these people! Acceptable losses! This wasn't the first time and it won't be the last!
Even the incident in Las Vegas that caused the death of Chuck's wife and Katie being bit happened because of Phenotrans. And the sad part is, even if you learn this, you still have to give Katie Zombrex every 12 hours.
What would happen to your cute little time bomb if she didn't get her drug?
You can't rebel against the system that literally has you completely reliant on their product. That's messed up, and while I'm pretty sure there aren't any examples of Big Pharma intentionally causing outbreaks in our world, well, none that I'm aware of, or none that would be considered a conspiracy theory. The fact that so many people are relying on the system that can easily take advantage of them to the point where they can't escape it is a terrifying thought to have linger in your brain. You might as well be a zombie as well, a slave to Phenotrans, while they pretend to be for the people, all the while they use you as cattle for experiments and lining their own pockets. God, that's depressing as all hell. Let's liven things up with some stupid shit, like you can still go around in weird costumes that no one will question you about. Yay! For the distraction about our very scary existence. Big money, woo! To get serious, this is just my takeaway from the game's story. Maybe I'm giving the writers too much credit and this is just how I choose to see the story's themes. I mean, the writers did put this guy in the game.
Dead not slow!
Man, if they ever remaster Dead Rising 2, I have no doubt this guy will get the axe. Hell, the Psychopaths, in comparison to the first, certainly had a lot more color to them, even improving from the clunky Psychopaths in my opinion of the first. Not to say that the original Psychopaths were bad, I just have a preference over the second games. You had things like Slappy, a prime example of the kind of mascots you see parodied in fanfiction creepypastas, a crazed protester who was trying to fight for zombie rights, and your average Redditor. Pimp Gimp gear included, although the average Raider would also probably call Randy an incel, so you got the best of both worlds. I joke here and there, but in my opinion, the bosses had a lot more personality. Still, for what it is, Dead Rising 2 at least brought something new to the table, but it's missing something. It's missing
Everything.
I'm going to Uranus zone!
This right here. This golden grail of zombie media is where my love of the series really shines. This is something that isn't really done in games, but doing an alternate take on the original Dead Rising 2 with Frank was amazing. What if Frank West was the protagonist of the second game and not Chuck? Well, Off the Record answers that by changing up the game. Not only do you get to play as the first game's protagonist, Frank West, but you also get additional content that wasn't in the OG Dead Rising 2, like Uranus Zone! Also, they additionally added things like new combo weapons, bringing up the camera feature from the first game, and a few changes to the Psychopath lineup from the OG. I think I know that guy. Oh well, he's dead. Or is he? There's also the issue I had with Katie's Zombrex. Quick spoilers for Dead Rising 1, but Frank gets infected with a zombie virus, and as a result he needs Zombrex in order to not turn into the Deadhead. However, unlike Katie, where you had to go back to the safe house in order to administer the drug, you can shoot up in the bathroom, on the strip, or even at the bar! Also, my editor thinks it looks like Frank is eating the Zombrex when you're wearing the Servbot helmet. There's also a few changes to the story as well. Without Chuck and Katie, there's a bit more focus on Frank and the other prominent characters. And frankly speaking, pun intended, with the story description I gave in the last section, Frank now has a more personal reason for wanting to figure out what's going on in Fortune City and Phenotrans. If you skip that part of the video, I won't go too into it, and it's better you get your own hands on the game to play it to understand. But what I will say is that I actually like playing as Frank West in this game too. Mainly because he's more of a sarcastic bastard this time around, as there are times where Frank will make verbal comments about what's happening around him, including his surroundings, other characters, survivors, or what he's doing.
Is Animal a real name?
But it's done in brevity, and Frank isn't constantly shooting off one-liners, unlike Mr. Hank East over here.
Well, if Queen Sandra is half as inbred as she sounds, then she's my kind of lady. No.
There's not a lot to say in regards to that of Dead Rising 2 Off the Record, mainly because a lot of the changes from the first game into the second are the same here. The biggest differences I've already lined out, but in all honesty, if I had to choose a title to play, it would be Off the Record. Not because I'm a diehard Frank Westoid who rides and dies Frank West like an OG Weeb does in Japan, but I honestly found the game to be a lot more enjoyable, mainly because of the fact you don't have to stop playing the game to take care of Katie. I prefer not to be so constrained to do something like that, where if I fail this one mission, I'm given a game over. Now, does that mean I think Off the Record is better than the OG? If the answer is yes, then by a minuscule margin. But really, it's just a personal preference. And there is one more aspect of Dead Rising 2 to bring up, and that's Case West. It's an additional DLC chapter for Dead Rising 2. Again, exclusive to the Xbox 360 system. Eat my ass, Capcom. Acting as an epilogue where Frank and Chuck team up in order to break into a Phenotrans facility. They explore the lab, finding out various people were forced to become test subjects for the company. The game even features a boss that had additional health bar, and let's just say the boss design is, well, something the modern audience developers wouldn't let you get away with in today's day and age. Still, much like Case Zero, the only way to play this portion of the story, which was confirmed to be canon, is to get it through Xbox 360, and hasn't been offered anywhere else as far as I'm aware of. Again, big fat solid snake here for you to devour, Capcom. Yes, it's utterly puzzling to me how these DLCs haven't been offered online for other people to get and enjoy. I understand that games aren't that long, but for $5 you do get a lot of bang for your buck. And finally...
Don't quit your day job.
Dead Rising 2 and its contemporaries were when I got into the series, and I came back to play the original after playing its sequel and Off the Record. Not saying it's the right way to go about it, but hey, I did the same thing with Ace Attorney and I still love the original Dead Rising and Ace Attorney as well. Sure, I enjoyed Off the Record's frank, withered, and sarcastic personality a bit more than Chuck's serious tone, but I still find both to be really good protagonists. And to me, I like to think that this is when Dead Rising 2 became a lot more beloved, which is also due in part to the fact that the games at the time weren't just locked onto a single console. And thanks to the magic of Steam, we now have the games on multiple different systems and have a much wider audience out there to appreciate what these games have to offer. But we're only halfway done, my friends, because next time we'll be heading into Los Perdidos, where we'll be entering into some shaky ground with Dead Rising 3. I'm MangaKamen, and thanks for watching.